Hey everyone, welcome back to the Deep Dive, where I get you up to speed on the stuff that really matters. So today we're going to be looking at how to customize the PA30 Infotype menu in SAP HCM.
Sounds good.
Yeah, so we've got some great sources here that really break this whole process down step by step.
Cool.
Yeah, and anyone who's worked with SAP HCM knows that PA30, that's where you're doing all kinds of employee data maintenance. It's a really important transaction.
Right, it's like the central hub.
Exactly. And so being able to customize that menu to make it work better for you, for your specific needs, for your organization, that can make a huge difference in terms of efficiency and just making things easier for everybody.
Definitely. It's all about that user experience. And I think one of the things I notice is how these sources really emphasize the practical side. It's not just theory. It's like, okay, here's how you actually do it.
Right, exactly. It's very hands-on.
Okay.
So I think our mission today is to really lay out those core steps. What are the essential moves you need to make to take that standard PA30 menu and really make it your own? I like that, make it your own.
So let's jump right in. I guess the first thing we got to do is find the right spot in SAP to actually do this customization.
Right, you got to find the right tools.
Yeah. So it all starts with the IMG, the implementation guide, and you get there using transaction code SPRO.
Okay. Familiar territory for anyone who's done any SAP configuration.
Exactly. So
Okay.
once you're an SPRO, then you got to navigate to the right path. And it's kind of like, finding your way through a maze. So it's personnel management, then personnel administration, then customizing procedures, and finally Infotype menu.
So it's pretty buried in there.
It is. But once you're there, you're in the right spot.
You've arrived.
You've arrived. And that's where all the magic happens.
The control center.
Yeah. So now that we're in the Infotype menu section, the next thing we got to figure out is, are we going to modify an existing menu or are we going to create a whole new one from scratch?
All right, big decision right off the bat.
It is. And the sources kind of talk about the pros and cons of each approach. Sometimes it's easier to just start fresh and build something totally new, especially if you've got very unique requirements.
Yeah, I can see that, especially if you're trying to do something really different or you've got a very specific way of working.
Right. Or if maybe you've inherited a system that's just a total mess and you're like, I just got to start over.
Clean slate.
Yeah, exactly. But then on the other hand, sometimes it makes more sense to just modify an existing menu, especially if it's already pretty close to what you need.
Right. Less work, and you're probably going to run into fewer problems.
Exactly. So it's really a judgment call. You got to kind of weigh the options and see what makes the most sense for your situation.
So once you've made that decision, then the real fun begins, right?
Yeah. Now it's time to actually define what's going to show up in that PA30 menu. And this is where we get into the Infotype menu structure.
Okay. Art of the beast.
Exactly. And this is where you get to decide, okay, which info types are going to be available, which subtypes are going to be available, and also what operations can people perform on each one? Can they create new records? Can they change existing records? Can they only display records? It's all up to you.
So you see, you can get really granular here.
You can, and this is where you can really start to tailor the menu to specific roles. Think about like an HR generalist versus somebody who's just focused on payroll. They're going to need access to different things.
Right. Different needs, different access.
Exactly. And the sources really emphasize that, think about who's going to be using this menu and what do they need to be able to do.
Make it work for them.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not just about what's in the menu. It's also about how it's organized. So you've got the sequence, which is the order that things appear in, and then you've got grouping, so you can kind of visually group related info types together.
Right. Makes sense.
Yeah.
Keep things tidy.
Yeah, and putting the most commonly used items at the top of the menu that can save people a ton of time and clicks.
Little things make a big difference.
Huge difference.
Yeah.
So, and then one other really cool thing that the sources talk about is this ability to assign these custom menus to specific user groups.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, so you can basically say, okay, these people in this department, they get this version of the menu, and then these people over here, they get a different version of the menu.
So you can really target the user experience.
Absolutely. It's super powerful, and it really helps to keep things clean and organized because people are only seeing the stuff that's relevant to them.
Less clutter, less confusion.
Exactly. So, okay, now we've gone through all this configuration. We've designed our beautiful new PA30 menu. What's the last step?
Don't forget to save.
Of course, always save your work, but then what?
You got to test it.
You got to test it. You absolutely have to test it. And this is where you go back into PA30 and you actually see how it looks and feels.
Yeah.
Does it work the way you expected it to?
Right, because sometimes things look good on paper, but then when you actually try to use them, it's a different story.
Totally. And this is also where it's really valuable to get feedback from the people who are actually going to be using this menu, you know?
The end user.
The end users, yeah, get them involved in the testing process and make sure that it really meets their needs.
User